Hey, how's it going? It is all the news all the time. My name is Felix. Some very interesting stuff today. As you can see on the screen, and probably from the thumbnail, what is going on? Our good friend, I use that advisedly, our good friend Dan Wootton, GB presenter, seems to be in a spot of bother. He is indeed. Really strange accusations against this guy who's a personal enemy. So I find vile. Let's have a little look at the situation. I find it very weird. This is a complicated story, so you better get a cup of tea and some biscuits, Garibaldi's, and let's see what is going on. So first of all, Dan Wootton, who is he? He's a GB presenter, so he's on this show called GB News. This is from a while ago, 14th. I say a while ago, it's yesterday. He's made a name for himself as one of the faces of GB News, a long-standing career in UK media. He's New Zealand and currently on holiday, taking a break from work commitments. Is he indeed? He moved to the United Kingdom when he was 21, holds both New Zealand and British citizenship. What do we really need to know? He began his career as a journalist in New Zealand, and he was reportedly a reporter for the Good Morning Show. He joined the News of the World TV team in February 2007, and he was TV editor in November 2007, showbiz editor in 2008, and then he was editor until the closure in 2011. Okay, so this is all good. Then he was on Lorraine's show, and he testified in the Leveson inquiry about phone hacking. Then he joined the Sun newspaper in 2013, and he's credited with breaking the Mexit story. And then he departed from the Sun and joined Talk Radio. I think that's quite important. To join Mail Online as a columnist. A daily show 4 days a week on GB News. 2011 GB News programme Tonight Live with Dan Wootton was renamed Dan Wootton Tonight. So that's the general synopsis of his career as such. But why am I talking about him? Why bring up this person who, as we know, was the person who wrote the article that led to all the shenanigans and disaster of the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp story? Well, because of this. This is on Twitter, and it's from a guy called Alex, and his name is Ruby Tubes. I don't know why, but that is. And it's a long story, which he's claiming. Well, let's start from here. It's about Dan Wootton, and the things he has done that have been covered up by the News UK are mind-blowing, he's saying. There's a little article here we'll come back to actually in a second. I know this because I went out with Dan. So Alex and Dan were in a relationship in late 2009, early 2013. And he says it's the worst period of his life. And let's go back a touch. Worst period of my entire life, where I was stalked by him to the point he had all the passwords for my social media accounts and email without my knowledge until I caught him out. There is an easier way of looking at these, and let's do it in the thread reader. It's easier to deal with. I went out with Dan between 2009 and 2013, worst period of my entire life. He had all the passwords to our email account until I called him out. When I found that my Gmail account was being regularly accessed from the News of the World office, where he works at the time, and I was an idiot though and allowed myself to be emotionally bullied into not leaving him. But then I found out more. While Dan was in New Zealand visiting his family, I stayed at his flat to cat sit, okay? And one day, while doing some laundry, I found a holdall stuffed down the back of the washing machine, right? It was locked with a padlock, so naturally I wanted to know what was inside, and I found an external hard drive. Oh yeah, okay. On it I found a video of one of Dan's supposed friends a Sun employee, so a person who works at the Sun newspaper, having a relation with his boyfriend. So this is Dan's friend having intimacy with his boyfriend. Not Dan's boyfriend, but this employee's boyfriend. The video clearly was made in secret, filmed from afar by hidden camera. In the same folder as the video, I found a transcript of an MSN conversation, which means text messaging, between the colleague's partner and someone called Martin Branning. Memorize this name, this is going to be important later. Whereby an arrangement was indeed made to make this tape in secret without his colleague's knowledge in exchange for £500. I knew instantly that Martin Branning was Dan Wootton. So the allegation here is that Dan Wootton is paying people to make these tapes without the other person's knowledge. And the only reason for that, I think, would be to blackmail people. I think that's what the implication is. I mean, allegedly. I finally got the courage to get out of the relationship, and a couple of months after leaving him, I randomly bumped into a guy I'd briefly dated around the time I met Dan in a bar. He asked me what was happening in my life, so I told him about the breakup, and the first thing he asked me, without me saying a word about it, was, what's the deal with this Martin Branning guy? Literally chilled me to the bone, because it was the first time I'd ever heard anyone else say the name out loud, and it was equally disturbing as my first discovery of the hard drive. Martin Branning had been messaging this guy, this friend he caught up with, encouraged him to try and hook up with and make these videos with several people, including one of my long-term ex-boyfriends and Dan himself. For money, that's strange. He had no idea that Martin Branning had been messaging this guy, encouraging him to try and hook up and make videos. Nope. Was just an alias. And then he was chatting online with Dan himself using a fake profile. At this point, I knew that if I'd randomly bumped into one random person from my past who brought him up, that the Dan Martin thing went much, much further. And I was right. Fast forward to February 2020, and the night that Caroline Flack did this, I didn't know her, but I met her once or twice through Dan, and she just seemed like an incredibly nice human being. Like many others, I was absolutely sickened by Dan's fake tears over her unaliveness. So emboldened by a few drinks, I took to Twitter on my old account and told the story of what I found in the holdall behind the washing machine over several tweets. Within a few minutes of the tweets going out, I was contacted by a mutual friend of mine and his, who on behalf of Dan put a ton of pressure on me to take them down, which regrettably, scared about the consequences from Dan, because he's terrifying, he did take it down. But I shared them because I knew if I did that someone would recognize the Branning name. Why is someone in asterisks? And I was right. They'd been seen, and shortly after I received the following message from a former colleague of his who told me that he and a number of other colleagues from the Sun had been harassed by Martin Branning. I've copied the image to protect the identity of the sender, and I will never ever publicly reveal any of the names of the victims I know of without their explicit permission, so don't ask me. Since this all happened, I have spoken to other victims and several journalists, but for whatever reason, fear of Dan's litigiousness, fear for their jobs, wanting an easier life, toxic masculinity, getting this story out has felt like the longest slog. But it needs to be out there, and I'm not deleting these tweets this time. So what is this? Alex, without prejudice and please, strictly between us for now. I remember you sent me some pretty colourful messages back in the day. Water under the bridge and all that. You mentioned emails from Martin Branning. I received messages asking me to do private work for 10k tax-free, just pose nude, etc. It has been causing a great deal of stress and upset for a number of people I know too. Felt like blackmail or entrapment. I showed my wife. She agrees it should go further. I've taken advice from police and lawyers. It was faceless until now. Now it's linked to Dan Wootton. Would you be prepared to discuss? Obviously, understand if not. Just can't let this go on if there are others suffering in silence. I'm in shock. Wow, this is very strange. Fifth, their jobs, wanting an easier life. Since 2020, I've personally spoken with the police about some incredibly serious allegations against Dan. Since 2020, nothing came of it, but I shared details of everything I know, and I know others have spoken to the Met about things he has done, and so far it's gone nowhere. But I've learned more about the abuse of colleagues who were bullied and paid off by News UK to protect their star, until I guess he was no longer worth the investment of what was being spent to do so. Just to be clear, I'm not alleging that his employers knew all about everything I've tweeted about here. As I've said, I know many of his victims have not come forward, but they did know about at least some of his problematic behaviour and they protected him. Wow. Wow, that is some serious allegations going on there. Serious allegations from Alex. And this has caused shenanigans all over the place. And this is why we come back to this first section. It says he's currently on holiday there, taking a break from his work commitments, which I think is a euphemism for please go away and keep your head down. And this is the article he wrote back in, when was it? April 2022. So during the time of the defamation trial with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, he's saying Johnny Depp is not a victim of cancel culture. He spent years trying to cancel Amber Heard and me. Fast for trial is designed to ruin his ex-wife, but won't erase the damning judgment against him. But this guy himself is accused of enormous amounts of stuff. And he's dragging his ass through the High Court for 2 years, resulted in humiliating loss. I'll wait till he gets to America. Complete vindication for me. I genuinely intended not to talk about Johnny Depp ever again. I think this photo is quite telling as well. Quite telling. Interesting. I was looking at some more stuff. I was doing some research into this. It's really late at the moment, but I was doing a lot of research about this. And the question I'm asking is, does this affect the UK trial? Is there issues of possible corruption? Because there's links between everybody now. There's links between all of these people. I'll show you a little graph which might make it easier to understand. But it all goes through the judge, whose name is Nicol. Judge Andrew Nicol. And Judge Andrew Nicol has a wife. Her name is Camilla Palmer. And Camilla Palmer and the judge have 2 children. As you can see here, she's married to Sir Andrew Nicol, High Court judge. They have 2 sons, Jamie and Robert Palmer. Robert Palmer was employed at the same radio station at the same time as Dan Wootton, which I think makes it very interesting indeed. There's a little graphic here, I think explains a lot of it. It's quite complicated to go through, but if we look at Doughty Street Chambers, this is the barristers' chambers in London. It was a former place where Judge Andrew Nicol worked. So he's employed by this barristers' chamber here. He wrote a book on media law, Judge Andrew Nicol. He has a son called Robert Palmer. This is Camille Parker, and this is the husband and wife. This is their son. He works at Talk Radio with Dan Wootton. Dan Wootton often came in and did the drive time segment on Talk Radio. This guy is a specialist in tax. He talks about tax issues. We know Talk Radio is owned by News Corp, and therefore Robert Murdoch, The Sun, the Sun newspaper, which is the one that published the article. And we have this general line of attack on Johnny Depp. But then if we look at Amber Heard over here, we see her having a guest appearance on International Women's Day, which was held at Doughty Street Chambers. So she's gone as a guest, star guest, at Doughty Street Chambers, which is nice. And then we have all these other women, this let's call them cabal of women. And we've got a private dinner party where we've got Baroness Helena Kennedy, I read one of her books when I was at university, actually. We've got Jen Robinson. She's the employee and mentor of Jeffrey Robertson. And Jeffrey, Jeffrey Robertson and Judge Andrew Nichol, they wrote a book together. This is about media law. So there's a link between these people, Doughty Street Chambers and Dan Wootton. If the allegations are true of blackmail and underhanded dealing, this becomes murkier and murkier and murkier. It's almost impossible to believe. It's kind of shambolic. The whole situation is quite shambolic. Very, very concerning. If you look at intelligenceuk.com, it talks about Johnny Depp being a victim of a corrupt UK justice system. You can have a little look there. And very, very interesting talking about conflict of interest. But this is before the knowledge about Dan Wootton's allegedly quite serious allegations about Dan Wootton in terms of blackmail. And then we have Robert Palmer. I looked at his, where's his thing? He has a Twitter page, and he has a rainbow flag next to his name, and him pronouns on his name. So I am assuming, rightly or wrongly, assuming that he is gay himself. That's an assumption I'm making. And we know that Dan Wootton is homosexual as well, because he's had previous boyfriends. And we know that there's blackmail going on in relation to colleagues at workplaces. These are some serious and strange allegations. And obviously we don't know anything yet, and we don't know if it's true. We certainly can't say that those allegations are, well, there's the implication for sure, but is it true? Is it not true? Completely unknown allegations. But what I do know is this tweet comes out from GB News 9 hours ago. It says, Dan Wootton tonight returns this Monday. It's currently, what is it currently? It is currently Saturday. Dan Wootton tonight returns this Monday. As always, there will be big opinions and fiery debates. Tune in from 9 p.m. We won't disappoint. GB News on YouTube. There's the link if you want to go there. Freeview there, Sky here, Virgin there. Dan Wootton tonight on Monday. I think there's going to be a lot of questions are going to be asked. A lot of questions are going to be asked. Very, very interesting indeed. If you type in Dan Wootton in here, you get a lot of stuff. Collaborated. Conspiracy allegations, predatory bullying allegations. This article's all over the place. Wow. Well, very interesting indeed. We shall see what comes of this. I think this story is going to go and go and go. Well, that's even more extreme allegation, but I don't know the source and I don't know the veracity of it at all. I can only present it as unverified allegations. Well, I have no idea. I've never seen um, so many strange allegations in such a short time. Well, I do not even know. Don't even know what to make of it, to be honest. Well, let me know your thoughts, and I will catch you guys later.